All right, so we will go ahead and get started here. I doubt this will take a full hour of time, but what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of review the current CNC submission process, and we're going to go over the revised new CNC process that should automate a lot of things. And specifically, I'm going to touch on how that changes or makes anything different for the group on this call. As I said, feel free to ask questions as we go. I'm going to start recording this now, and I'm going to run through how everything is set up so that everyone is on the same page when we start to use this. All right, and if you can start the recording, it just needs to be kicked off by the meeting organizer. You can just hit that button. Andrea, can you do that on your end?
Yeah, I've started recording it.
Okay, cool. And I will get started. So the screen that you should see in front of you is the current and long-standing CNC submission form. On the back end, this produces a lot of manual effort for a number of folks. So probably back in February, maybe a little bit before then, we started looking at ways to optimize and streamline this. What that means is that we are going to use a different form, all the same fields, but tied to a different system in the back end that lets us have a little control. Let's see if I can figure out who's got some on-hold music. Okay, you got it. All right, so anyway, this is the form that you may or may not have seen, but this is a form that agents can go out and submit that ends up going in front of the agent association in various ways, right? You've got your originating state, description, your category, and then contact information, right? So this is the current form. The new form looks like this. All of the exact same fields in the exact same order with the exact same language. So from a submission standpoint, for the people who submit CNCs, nothing changes, right? They still go in and fill out the form as they would normally and click submit. That part is still the same. Now what we're going to do to make this even simpler is we're going to take this form and embed it on this page. So instead of seeing this form, you will see embedded this new version of that form, right? But essentially the process does not change. They're still filling out the exact same fields from the exact same page, clicking a submit button just as they do today. So where the magical part of that happens is when you do submit a form, instead of that going into a system that we don't have access to, that's actually going to go into this master list of all submitted CNC forms, right? And obviously there's an approval process that goes with this. There's state level approvals, there's also regional level approvals, and this is going to work with all of that. So there are workflows that happen in the back end where when that form gets submitted, it takes all the information from that form and it puts it into this list. This list then lets you monitor what's being added, what's being requested. It will also send an email depending on what state is selected to the person responsible. So I'm going to show you high level how that works in the back end, right? So there are two workflows that run. And you don't need to know how these are built or anything about that. You just need to know kind of what the process is. So I'm just going to read high level, right? When a new response is submitted, it's going to go and check who the state level approver is. Right now, these are just the state presidents. It is going to grab all the details from that form being submitted. It is going to create that item and it is going to send an email to the state level approver, right? This is what it's going to look like. This will be your email address, and it'll say new CNC available for review. Then it'll have some details. It'll tell you that a new form has been submitted. You don't need to take any action. It's basically an FYI, just depending on your twice annual review of all submitted CNCs, however you want to work that. It's just going to be an FYI, and it'll give you two things. It'll give you a link both to the list for state level items that need to be reviewed. It'll also give you a direct link just to that new item, right? So you have easy access to both the list if you want to see all of the submitted items that are requiring state level review, or it'll give you a link directly to that new submission. So that's the first workflow that happens, right? It's just taking the information from that form, putting it in the list, and it's letting whoever is the state level approver for the state that it was submitted for, it's letting them know that a new CNC form has been submitted. The other workflow that runs is just monitoring what you do with that. It's monitoring basically the approval status, right? So I'm going to flip back over here and show you what that looks like in this list. So when a new item comes in here and it needs state level review, you've got on this list over here in the top right, you've got a drop-down menu of all of the different views. And a view on this list is basically a filtered, sorted conglomeration of the data, right? So if we have things in here that are awaiting state review, they're going to be here in state review needed, this number 2 here, right? So when you click on that, you're going to see the filtered view of everything needing state level approval. And you can tell that it needs review because under state approval status, it's going to say pending. So for you as an approver, all you need to do is look at the request details, and then you're going to set the state approval status. And there are a couple of ways to do that. One easy way is you can just double click on this item, right? And it's going to open up all of your details. So one, you can look at the additional information for the request if they got lengthy. You can also scroll down to the bottom here, and the one field that you care about is going to be the state approval status, right? By default, when a new one gets submitted, it's going to be in pending status. If I want to say approve that, I would click review complete approved, or if I wanted to reject it, obviously I'd pick review complete rejected. Right? You saw that that saved right there automatically when I selected it. If I go over here, I'm done with that one, right? I've already reviewed that one. Eventually that'll fall off the list. If I were to refresh this page, you wouldn't see that on there anymore. Now, what happens in the back end when you approve or reject something is this other workflow is running behind the scenes. It's basically just monitoring that list for any approval status changes. So when anything in that list gets changed or updated by anyone, it'll look and see a couple things, right? It'll look to see if the item is brand new or if it's already been reviewed. And if it has, it won't do anything, right? It's a completed item. But it'll also look to see if it's just gotten state level approval. And if it does, then it sends a notice up to the regional board members. And it also has a link to their filtered list view of all of the items that need regional level review. It will also just change the status for that state level. So this goes to everybody. Larry's going to get that as the main 2 address, but it's also got everyone else on the regional level copied in, right? So you can all go and review that same item. And again, these don't have to happen in real time. You will get the email notification in real time, but the review can happen whenever it makes sense for the group. But it's going to monitor for state level approval. And if it gets approved, it'll send it up to regional. If it gets rejected, it'll send me a notification. It'll just log the status in the list. Basically, anything that gets rejected will stay in that list for future reference if you need it, but no further action will be taken on it, and you don't necessarily need to see it in your views. There's also regional level approval, right? It's still monitoring for that. So after state level approval, it starts looking for regional level approval. If regional level gets approved, right, it updates the status so that other folks can go and make ultimate decisions, get that assigned internally to go and take action on. It'll also record rejections, right, so that you have that record in the list. And how all of this works, just on this end that you would be looking at, is they're all in these views, right? So you've got your all items view, you've got your state review needed, which filters for anything needing state level review. Regional has their own for regional level review. And once those get approved at both the state and the regional level, they will show up in this approved CNCs view, right? And that's where we take action and assign it to somebody, give it a number. There'll be a response. There'll be status updates on that. Those become, mini projects or pieces on our end. So all those views are available for everyone, at least the 13 people, right? The 8 state level presidents, and then everyone on the regional board has access to the site. You are the ones who will be getting the emails. If there are other people on this call who need to be involved in that process, need to be reviewing or approving or rejecting items, you can let us know and we can get you added as people who have access to this site. But for right now, it's just the state level presidents and the regional board members. And those are how the emails are set up. We'll obviously, as the roles and membership change over time, we'll make sure that the emails get updated so that you don't get spammed when you are no longer in a certain role. But basically what this will do is just keep everything in one place for you and cut out a bunch of manual effort. There's a lot of things we can do once the data is in here as far as notifications and workflows. But the whole goal here is just to try and make this a simpler process from start to finish. I told you this wouldn't take the whole hour, right? This has been 13-ish minutes. And I know this is a high-level overview, and you may not be familiar with SharePoint or lists. You can kind of think of this as souped up Excel inside of a different frame, but it all works the same way. So with that, I want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with that process. I have myself copied, kind of blind carbon copied on all of the emails that go out, just so that I can monitor and make sure everything is working and being routed as needed. If you ever need help with any part of this process, you can certainly reach out. For the most part, it should be relatively straightforward. We've got documentation that we'll share with everyone as this goes live so that you remember where to click and what field to change. But for the most part, it's pretty simple, right? On the state level, you change the state approval status. On the regional level, you change the regional approval status, and the rest kind of takes care of itself. Any questions on how that's set up or how any of this works? Any asks on features or other capabilities?
Joe, can you just go over really quick if they want to edit the CNC for any grammar issues or things like that before they approve it? Can you just show us how to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say we go into any of these, right? The same way that we changed the approval status is how we can change any of these fields, right? So here's this item. Again, I just double clicked on it. You can also select it and click edit. You can additionally click quick edit, right, which will pop it into an Excel format. Any of those 3 ways that you get into this, you'll have the ability to just click into any of these fields to edit, right? So you can see there that it's active for editing. So I can say, ooh, devastating. Let's make this all capital, right? Just anything like that.
Or let's not make it all capital.
Right, but essentially all you'll do is you'll just click into the field and you'll be able to type, edit, save as needed. And each time you click out of a field, it will save. You just saw that little saving and saved dialog right there. That's how any of these fields will work. So you can do it, again, a couple ways. You can get to it through double clicking on the item. You can select it and click edit. You can click the quick edit button, which will pop it into Excel format. I'll show you what that looks like because some people are most familiar and comfortable with that. Right, quick edit. Here's what that looks like. Give it a second here.
Does that have versioning?
Yes, these also have versioning. So if you make changes, there is a record of those changes. We can always roll back if we need to, or we can have like a history of what's been changed.
So that way, if you accidentally delete something, this would give you a chance to recover what you deleted, or?
Yeah, if you ever delete anything out of here, there are 3 different ways that we can recover it. Takes just a couple seconds. So if you delete something, there is a recycle bin it goes into. Probably the easiest way is just let one of us know that you've deleted something and we'll restore it. It'll go back to wherever you deleted it from with all of the most recently updated fields and status. Does that answer the editing question? Any other questions on how that piece works?
Joe, a different question.
Sure.
One of the tasks that typically falls on one of the regional board members is to take a look at the CNCs that came in and compare them back to the last 2 years so that we aren't duplicating something that's already been talked about. Can you go through that?
Sure. So right now, this is a master list of all of the CNCs minus the ones from so far this year that haven't been added, but going back to 2012, right? So if you ever need to compare, you can do a lot of things here with this list, right? You can group by year, you could filter by year to see if there were repeats, especially if you're looking at the most recent year, right? So I could look at this and say, I just want to see what we were working on in 2018, right? For our March submissions. And you can see the responses, where some of those were left, right? So closed, implemented, open, actions planned. Like, did we actually finish this, right? So you're going to have access to the master list of what was submitted in previous years and in the current year.
But there's no search feature from a topic standpoint.
Sure. So let's say we wanted to search, this usually searches on most of the fields, but let's say, I don't know, let's see if we can get some. So we want to search for things that have quotes in them, right? This will try and filter all of this to find any field that has the word quotes in it. It'll try and pull those back. So it will, this search up here, you'll see it's got contextual language, right? It says search this list, and that'll bring anything back. We can tweak that a little bit. That's a good way to quickly filter what you're looking for.
Okay.
Any other questions on that process? Again, I know that we kind of breezed through it, but really when you get into this, there won't be too much that you'll need to do apart from opening the item to edit the status and maybe clean up some spelling or grammatical issues. It'll save as you go, and it'll send email notifications when things are ready, and everything in the views will just fall off as you've completed whatever task you need to do there. So as you approve or reject, those things will go off of your list so that you're not having a bunch of clutter to have to deal with and sort through.
Is there some sort of follow-up system to make sure a state is approved or rejected?
There isn't currently. We can easily add that. Another thing that we have talked about is that at some point we can, instead of having you have to go to this list, have approvals and rejections happen inside of an email. So that email notification that tells you that there's a new option, you could do your approval or rejection from there. Just depends on what is going to work best and be most efficient for the group. Biggest piece is getting the data into the system, and then that lets us have a lot of flexibility. So just because it works a certain way today doesn't mean you can't send us suggestions or requests. At this point, things are pretty easy to change quickly. So if there are things like that, in terms of notifications for follow-up, like a 30-day reminder or a 2-week reminder, we can set any of that up relatively simply.
I think part of the overall strategy with this is to work through this next CNC session using it as close to how we've got it set up as possible. So if we run into things that bring stuff to a standstill, then we'll address those. And then to circle up with this group after they've gone through a one go around continue to improve the process and continue to find ways where we're getting the CNCs submitted effectively, getting them approved effectively, making it so it's not as cumbersome time-wise for anybody who's got these approvals. But B, the long-term goal is to make sure that we're getting the highest quality of cares and concerns addressed and promoted and prioritized that we possibly can. And so this is step one, and that is just making sure we've got good data that we can access in effective ways and make it so that you guys can spend more time thinking about what the CNC is saying and less time worrying about how you go about approving it and getting it escalated. So we'll have a circle back after we've gone through this next session, which is on October 30th. After we've all gone through the process, then we can send out some surveys and get some feedback and have some discussions with this group to see how it went.
Any other questions while we've got everyone together on process or capabilities?
Joe, this is Steve Goucher out in Arizona.
Hey, Steve.
Is there a way that we can export these to circulate them or grant access to our state board so they can at least review them prior to our conference call to approve or reject?
Yes, absolutely. If you have people in your offices that are part of that review process, you can export it by clicking this button up here, right? And this will be specific to whatever view you're on. So right now I'm on all items, but if I wanted to look at, state-specific items for review, I just click on this view and click export to Excel, and that'll dump all the data into Excel, and you can email that or share it as needed. The other way you could do it is if you wanted people to work right inside of this list, you can give us that list of names. We can add them to have access to the list the same way that you would. So it depends on if you want to work digitally or manually.
Well, I'm thinking about, in Arizona, typically I'm the secretary, so all of this falls on me to manage, and just start burdening the president with more activities. But I don't know that we want everybody in there being able to make a decision on an approval or not.
Yeah, you can always add people with view-only access instead of having them with the capability to edit. So if you wanted to have view-only access, you can definitely set that up for users. It's just another level, right? There's full control, there's contribute access, and there's view-only. And we just give them view-only.
Perfect.
Any other questions?
So Joe,
Otherwise,
a couple questions.
Yeah, go for it.
Do I understand you or your team are going to update the previously submitted into this system?
Yeah, so all of the submissions from 2012 until November of 2018 are already in this list. What?
All approved.
Yeah, all of the approved items, right? All of the approved items from those years up until November of last year are in here. The 2019 items will be added. I need to get a list of those from the powers that be to get them imported into this list. And then going forward, with that new form embedded on the site, they'll just feed into here automatically.
Okay, and then once each state has their completed list to work with, how will we see that on the screen?
So depending on the state, right, we can do a filter for those and set up views for each state for completed items that need review or committee view, right? So we would add additional views that are filtered by state or grouped by state so that you can easily just look at the stuff specific to you, if that makes sense.
Generally, yes. And then once the states have submitted those to the region will be able to do a similar thing.
Correct.
For regional approval.
Yeah, it's just different ways of kind of slicing and dicing the data, right? So we've got state, we've got year, month, etc. We've got approval statuses, we've got actual statuses. There are a number of ways that we can group, sort, filter the data to make it accessible in the way that's going to have you do the least amount of work for review.
And you're aware at the region level, we will send in even those that are not approved.
Yes, yeah, and that's why we're not removing anything from the list. We're going to have even the ones that weren't approved available for future discussion, future reference. Nothing falls out of the list.
Perfect.
All right, so next steps from here, if there are no further questions, is
I have
we
a
will.
one quick question, just to review. The states coming up that have a meeting, they would just log into this SharePoint and then they would sort by state items that need review, and then would they still need to sort by the year and then the state just to get their state specific ones that they need to vote on?
So what we'll do for this state review needed, obviously these will all be 2019. We'll have them pre-filtered for just the current CNCs, right? So whether that's your spring session or the fall session, we'll have those pre-filtered for you.
Okay.
So when you go in here, all you'll need to do is look at state review needed. We'll have it available where you can filter by the state here. So then you just look at Arizona or you look at Iowa. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll start to go over kind of what happens from here and what to expect between now and October when you start doing your review.
So I guess I have one question. This is Kelly in Kansas.
Yeah.
We still seem to get a lot of CNCs emailed to us or sent to us in paper form that aren't going through the website.
Sure.
If that happens, are we, I guess, I mean, best practice would be to try to avoid that happening in the future. But if it did here, especially this first, this fall yet, is there a way to integrate those, or what would be your recommendation of how to handle that?
So a couple things that could happen, right? We could manually enter those into this list. We could also go, if you do get something submitted via email, you could take it out to that form on the Agent Association site and enter the same information that way. And then it would tie into the workflows behind the scenes. But either way you do it, we'd be able to get the information in there. Obviously, to your point, the desired end result is that people stop emailing you CNCs and use the form on the website for that purpose. But understanding that there'll be some stragglers, yeah, there are a couple ways we can still get the data into the list. All right, so from here, the next steps on our end are to work with Elsie and team and make sure that we get the form embedded in that page. It will essentially then be live, and then we will be monitoring and working with everyone to make sure notification emails are going out appropriately, make sure that everyone's comfortable with the approval process and what's asked of them for that. We'll make sure the documentation is available and shared with everyone. And that'll have links and screenshots and kind of the step-by-step of what you need to do and when. And we will certainly be available throughout the next several months for feedback, any sort of updates or bug fixes, and any general feedback, right? Obviously, the ultimate goal is just to make sure this is as easy as possible for everyone involved. So whatever ways we can make that happen, we will certainly work to get there. Any last questions? Otherwise, I can give people 30 minutes of their lunch hour back, and we will just follow up when things are things are officially ready. All right. If there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. If you do think of anything after the fact, feel free to reach out to us and get you some answers. We'll make this recording available so that you can go back and listen to any feedback or watch the process, know where to click, know what to change. But we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your afternoon, especially during the lunch hour, to walk through this with us. Just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page and is ready to go when we start using this.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.